Welcome to Friday, January 30th, 2026. When you or a loved one has suffered serious harm, look to Wyoming's board-certified truck accident lawyer, Grant Lawson, leading the charge for accountability and fighting for safer roads. Don't settle for anything less. Visit truckaccidents.com. Well, this will sound familiar. In fact, it's the same podcast basically we gave you last Friday about an Arctic outbreak. Results will be a little bit similar to last week, but more focused in the south and the east and the central U.S. once again. We have another Arctic surge, very impressive one, coming across the Canadian border and into the Plain States, and it's going to create a whole host of problems again for the deep south and parts of the east. As we've been mentioning, the back edge of the Arctic wave will bring a little bit of snow to the Dakotas, eastern Montana, extreme northeastern Wyoming, parts of Nebraska, parts of Iowa, parts of the northwest Corn Belt, as the Arctic air's western edge will grab a little bit of moisture. But for the Front Range, for the Rocky Mountain Rest, areas west of the Continental Divide, it's a different day, but it's the same weather. We have that next little system that's going to try to sneak in around Monday and Tuesday of next week. It's going to be one of these systems that produces some mountain snow showers, a few snow showers in the plains, but it's really not going to be much of a weather maker. Then behind this, we see a large area of high pressure, another big one, sets up over the western United States once that little system Monday and Tuesday moves through. Then the question is, what happens after that? Is this another blocking high pressure ridge? Is this going to set up and sit for the entire month of February, or be around for a few days and go away? Well, we'll take a look and see what might or might not happen after that high pressure ridge. The system that came through overnight Thursday into Friday morning did bring some nice snow to the mountains of northern Colorado and southern Wyoming. As you can see there, the mountains, Mountain Circle Wilderness there in the North Park area. So nice to see just a little bit of snow for the ski slopes in some of the ski areas of southern Wyoming and northern Colorado with that system. But now that system's going to head east. So if you look at all the weather advisories, watches, and warnings that the National Weather Service has issued, we do have a winter weather advisory, including the Black Hills of Wyoming and South Dakota, for that snow that's coming on the backside of the Arctic wave. And then you can see all the blue. The blue means wind chill advisories, cold advisories for severe cold. And then you can see going into the deep south, we've got a wide variety of freezing warnings and watches in effect for some extremely far southern latitude areas as the cold air once again plunges in. Then we're going to have a really nasty snowstorm for the Carolinas, eastern Tennessee, and parts of Virginia. In fact, if you look out in eastern North Carolina, this is going to be just really nasty, especially when you get out into the Outer Banks, as you get to the coastal areas because of the high winds. Snowfall of 8 inches or more. Extreme eastern North Carolina really under the gun. Going to be kind of a snow cane in terms of the wind and the heavy snowfall. You get further inland and you're still going to see some significant snow in the eastern mountains of Tennessee, western North Carolina, and that's going to get down into northeast Georgia and across southeast Carolina. Atlanta kind of on the edge, but if you get an inch of snow in Atlanta, that's a big deal. And if you look at the freeze watches that are in effect, going all the way down to just west of Miami and Fort Lauderdale there, even Fort Lauderdale and Miami, you're talking about temperatures in that low to mid 30s. Whether or not they get freezing or not, we don't know. You get up into central and northern Florida, you're looking at temperatures down into the low to mid 20s. So if you're in Florida, headed to Florida, watch for falling iguanas. It's a thing, and boy, with temperatures like this, it's a real possibility. So we can see what's going on. The Arctic wave coming into the Dakotas there, Minnesota, pushing extremely cold air south into the region. And then when we take a look at satellite imagery, we can see that cold air already pushing south. We've got this storminess in the eastern Pacific. It's there, but it's really got nowhere to go because of this high pressure ridge right there. And you can see on the satellite imagery the intensity of the Arctic air mass right here coming out of Manitoba and heading south and east. And this circle of blue right here is just going to come down like this, and then cause that storm to form and keep the south and the central and the eastern United States very cold and stormy. And if you track the temperature anomalies, you can see the far western edges just gets to the Montana, North Dakota border area, into the Black Hills, the edge of it, and a good part in Nebraska. This is by 11 a.m. today. By Saturday, you can see the deep purple going to the Gulf Coast, and you can see high pressure nosing in behind it, bringing a warming trend to Western Canada and the Pacific Northwest, while the opposite is happening, and the deep south continues to have 30 to 50 degree temperature anomalies in Florida, then the coastal areas here where that storm is going to really wind up and be quite intense. So this is through Monday morning. You can see the heaviest moisture ends up off the coast, but on the back side of that low, you're going to have the counterclockwise spin bring moisture upslope into the Appalachians. And with the Arctic air coming in, that's why all the way to the Outer Banks, it's likely going to snow. And then dry Arctic air coming in won't produce much precipitation. But that's one reason why we're going to have freezing temperatures in the deep south. There won't be many clouds or precipitation to hold temperatures up. Skies will clear. Then on the backside, a little bit of snowfall on the Arctic edge on the west side, and the interior west can still protected by this large area of high pressure. And there's your snowfall totals through Monday morning. As we get into next week, we've got this little wave, this little minnow that's going to get through the high pressure ridge that's going to come through around Monday and Tuesday of next week. Again, this will be mountain snow showers, a few snow showers on the plains, but you can see we're in the same configuration. Deep low in the eastern Pacific, high pressure around the west coast. Now the Arctic air is beginning to make its retreat, kind of moving out of the eastern United States slowly but surely. That will allow moderating temperatures, but really not until the middle of next week. Then as we get into beyond this period, beyond Monday and Tuesday, oh boy, here we go again. A big chunky high comes in and develops right over Idaho, right on top of Salt Lake City again. Bad air quality coming back into the Salt Lake City area. It really hasn't gotten any better, but it's going to be getting worse again for a few days next week as this big high pressure ridge comes in, and that drives another little wave. There could be more winter weather mid to late next week along the East Coast with this system. This could end up being a little bit of a weather maker as well, as they just continue to get beaten to a pulp in the central and the eastern United States. So, question is this high semi-permanent? Is it going to last and just take February into the annuals of warm and dry like December, most of January? Well, possibly. We need to take a look at what at least the models are saying to give us some clue on whether or not this high pressure ridge is going to stay or not. Or is it going to be a situation where it's going to build in strongly, then eventually break down? So if we look at where we are, this is by Thursday of next week. If we look at the following Sunday, I want you to notice, and we'll go and look at some other maps here in a minute, the high pressure shifts eastward to near the Four Corners area. It begins to move. But notice out here in the Pacific, it's getting wavy. Again, this is a model, so you have to take it with a grain of salt. Models are not reality, they're just tools. But we're getting a bit of an elongation of the polar vortex getting stretched to the northwest right now. At least this is what it's looking like by next weekend. That should allow this high to shift eastward, bringing a warming trend to the much needed warming trend to the eastern side of the United States. What we need to see happen is we need this jet stream pattern to bust through, get the westerlies going again, and not either have a big ridge form again here or have a big trough stall out over the west coast of California. We just need to see more systems have the ability to move through the western United States, have the westerlies bust through. We really haven't seen westerlies come through we got to go back to December when California was getting those storms and getting very wet. It's really been that long since any consolidated jet stream energy has been able to muster itself without running into a big high or some type of split flow pattern. So let's compare to where we are at 500 millibars today. So you can see the structure of the high pressure ridge in the west, the Arctic air in the trough in the east, and the big trough out here in the eastern Pacific. So if we go out to next weekend, by next Sunday, notice a couple of things. Notice the polar vortex retreats back to the northwest, and we start to see the waviness begin to form out in the Gulf of Alaska and along the west coast. Will this happen? Don't know. This is 10 days out. Now, this was indicated by the European weekly models that we showed you a while ago, but we just have to wait and see. It's hurry up and wait. But one thing that, if you look at the jet stream winds, you see some very good jet stream energy with these Pacific waves. You see how the jet stream energy is on the back side, the strongest winds in these troughs? So these troughs will want to dig to the south and east as they come in. There's another one right here. This is a wave train. The models are saying a wave train starts. So you can see we've got a rail car here, rail car here, rail car here, and you have little ridges of high pressures in between them that help get things going. This massive jet stream wind is forecasted to move out across the Atlantic, and this will allow warmer air to begin to move into the southeastern United States. Again, this is all potential, and we know what potential means sometimes. Another way to look at the jet stream, I'm showing you the same jet stream time frame here. This is for next Sunday, the 8th, but across all of the North Pacific. And sometimes I show you these jet stream maps in the North Pacific to say, if this happens, that's a harbinger of change. So here we have the good wave here, another really good looking wave here, then a very strong jet stream wind punching across the Pacific. If our weather in the West is going to change, this is how it's going to happen. If this wind flow energy gets interrupted, if it gets directed this way, if it gets directed too far this way, the flow becomes split. Then we get into another big high pressure ridge or a stalled low in the Eastern Pacific that puts the Rockies back in a ridge again. So we have a variety of scenarios. If you take the model for face value, it shows that the westerlies finally begin to bust through the weekend after this one. But we're just going to have to wait and see. And I'm not going to show you any forecast maps after that time period. That's for sure. Have yourself a great weekend. We'll see you on Monday.